I hope that you are well and also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today we'll be doing our grade 8 English lesson on hyphens. And before we start with our lesson on hyphens, we're going to log into aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with your username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of language arts, grade 8. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of hyphens. All right. So we're doing hyphens, all right? So our chapter that we are focusing on is is hyphens. The subject is English, which is language arts, grade 8. And the lessons that we will be focusing on under the chapter on hyphens, it will be to use hyphens in compound adjectives. All right. So now we're going to a compound adjective, right? And we're going to find out what's a compound adjective. A compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word. So a compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word, right? Remember, compound usually shows, if we were to talk about a compound sentence, then it is usually two sentences that is joined maybe by a conjunction, for example, right? An adjective would be describing a noun or would be modifying or telling us more about the noun. But now, when it comes to compound adjective, it says a compound adjective is an adjective made up of more than one word. It's like two words or more. In general, we use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective. especially when the adjective could be misread without the hyphen. So in general, we use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without the hyphen. For example, if we look at a, let's say, compound adjective, a full-time job, right? That is an example. It basically tells us or puts emphasis on the fact that you are working full-time at a specific job. Another example is that well-known actor, right? Which means that they're putting emphasis on the actor being well known, right? And if we look at a few more examples, we look at a few more examples on compound adjectives, right? Where the hyphen joins the word of a compound adjective. So we have a full-time job. Oopsie. That well-known actor. Um, an open-ended question, right? So if there was basically no hyphen, right? So if there was basically no hyphen, and then it's like they were saying, then you could have misread that specific word, because if you look at the word open-ended question, right? Open is a word on its own, right? It is to like open something, shut something. So open something, right? So open-ended question. Ended is to basically um, come to a halt, to a stop, right? So which means that open-ended question, right? It does not make sense if we were to, for example, have that within a sentence, right? So if we were to have that in a sentence without the hyphen, and then that sentence would have been misread without the hyphen. Because open means something, ended means another thing. But the hyphen basically joins that two words, right, of the compound adjective, and then basically open ended, it basically changes its meaning now. All right. If we look at another example, right, of words, let's say with compound adjectives, let me write it down. Then we can say, my 2-year-old cousin, right? So my 2-year-old cousin. So that is also a compound adjective, right? My 2-year-old cousin, as well as an ear-splitting scream. It just basically puts emphasis on how loud the person is screaming, right? So it basically just puts emphasis on how loud the person is screaming. And if, for example, there was no hyphen and then ear splitting, it would have been basically, it would have been read as direct or as literal, if that's the word, than a figurative expression. All right. And we are doing our tutorial lessons on aplusstudents.ca, right? So now we're going to aplusstudents.ca and we're going to the chapter of hyphens. And we said the lesson that we are focusing on under hyphens is to use hyphens in compound adjectives. All right, so we said a compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word. In general, you need to use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without the hyphen. And we made an example of a full-time job, well-known actor, my 2-year-old cousin, an open-ended question, an ear-splitting scream to basically put emphasis on how loud the person is screaming, and an open and shut case, right? So when it also comes to adjectives, right? Or let's say the compound adjectives, we do not use a hyphen when the compound adjectives comes after a noun. So if the compound adjective comes after the noun, then we do not use the hyphen. So do not use a hyphen when the compound adjective comes after the noun or after a pronoun that it modifies, or when the first word of the compound is an adjective or verb ending in ly. And an example of that is, that actor is well known. Remember, we said a well known actor, which means that actor is after, or let's say the noun, yeah, is after well known. But as soon as the noun, which is, for example, actor, is in front of or comes before the compound adjective, and then we cannot use a hyphen. So we do not use a hyphen when the compound adjectives comes after the noun or pronoun that it modifies. Or when the first word of the compound is an adverb that is ending in ly. So an adverb that tells us how. For example, that actor is well known. So if they say like the actor is well known, which means that he is well known by everybody, right? Or he's like famous. Another one is my cousin. Cousin is a noun. Is 2 years old. And as you can see, those adjective, well, let's say the compound adjectives comes after the nouns, which is cousin or actor. A barely visible star, right? There we have the word barely that starts with an ly, which means, let's say the adverb ly, which means that our the compound word should not have a hyphen. And freshly washed sheets. So freshly washed sheets, right? There we also don't use a hyphen, right? Because of the adverb that is being used, which is freshly washed sheets. And freshly is basically the first word over there, and that is why we don't use a hyphen. All right. So when it also comes to the compound adjectives, right? Note that adjacent adjectives are only considered a compound if the first adjective describes the second adjective rather than the noun. So an adjacent adjective are only considered a compound if the first adjective describes the second adjective rather than the noun. So no, we said that the adjacent adjectives are only considered a compound if the first adjective describes the second adjective rather than the noun. For example, an expensive new desk, right? Which means that if you look at the desk, if you look at the word desk is being described, right? which means that we're specifically saying that the disc is expensive and the disc is brand new. Because that it means when it says that expensive new disc, right? That is without the hyphen. And if we look at the second one that says an expensive looking disc, right? So an expensive looking disc, which means that expensive looking, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's expensive. It basically is just looking as if it looks expensive, but it's not. Right? All right. So now if we look at the first one, right, it says that we need to add hyphens to compound adjectives when necessary. If no hyphens are needed, then we just submit the text without any changes, right? So with any changes, and then we just submit it. So if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area such as an air-conditioned building and drink plenty of water. So basically, we need to add the hyphen when needed, right? And if we add the hyphen when needed within the sentence, and then we say, if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area such as an air conditioned building. So air hyphen conditioned. So air conditioned buildings. All right. So here it says air conditioned is a compound adjective and it comes before the noun that it modifies, which is building, and it needs a hyphen, which we did. He is a well respected educator in part because he provides the support necessary for his students to meet his high expectations. So he is a well respected educator in part because he provides the support necessary for his students to meet his high expectations. And if we add the hyphen to a specific word, then we'll, for example, says well respected, because that basically puts emphasis on the type of person that he is and how everybody else respects this specific educator. So well respected is our compound adjective, right? It comes before the noun, which is an indicator, right? And we added our hyphen because it puts emphasis on the, for example, the noun, which is the educator. So well respected. All right, let's go to our test. So we're going to begin a test where we are going to use a hyphen in a compound adjective. So we need to add a hyphen to compound adjectives where necessary. If no hyphens are needed, then you just submit the text without making any changes. So we need to use a hyphen or add a hyphen to the compound adjective, right? So it says loam, a type of soil that contains day, silt, and sand, is popular for its moisture retaining properties. So we need to add a hyphen within one of these sentences. So do we go with the first option, which is loam, a type of soil that contains clay, silt, and sand, is popular for its moisture retaining property. So which means that the hyphen goes by moisture retaining properties. Or do we just add no hyphen? So it's either the first option where we added the hyphen by moisture retaining or no hyphen. So we'll go with the moisture retaining properties. And moisture retaining with its hyphen is correct. All right, so spring brought warmer days, blossoming trees, and the long awaited farmers market, which featured seasonal produce, asparagus, strawberries, and peas. So we need to add the hyphen when necessary, right? Or if there's no hyphens needed, we just submit the text without making any changes. So it is either spring brought, warmer days, blossoming days, oh yeah, the first option, and long awaited farming markets, which featured seasonal produce, asparagus, strawberries, and peas, or the second option. The first option we have long awaited, we put the hyphen by long awaited, whereas by the second paragraph, there are no hyphens at all. right, so if we choose the correct one, we're going to say long awaited, right, farmers. So we're putting emphasis on long awaited farmers. And that is correct. Long awaited farmers. In William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long winded nurse serves as her confidant. So we're saying that in Shakespeare, William Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, Juliet's chatty, long-winded nurse serves as her confidant. And I think here by long-winded, the hyphen should go because it basically puts emphasis on the nurse. It's describing or telling us about the nurse. So if we put the specific hyphen, right? Yes, then we will go with the first option, which is the long-winded nurse. Long-winded nurse. And that one is correct. All right. It's the body temperature, right? So the body temperature of warm-blooded animals. So the body temperature of warm-blooded animals, such as mammals and birds, typically remains constant despite changes in the surrounding areas. So we need to add the hyphens where necessary. And I think it says the body temperature of a warm blooded animal, right? Because we're specifically talking about an animal that is warm blooded. So warm blooded. We'll go with the first option, which is warm blooded, because with warm blooded, it is the compound adjective and it's telling us more about the animals, because it's specifically telling us the body temperature of warm blooded animals, such as mammals and birds, typically remain constant despite change in the surrounding areas or environments. All right. So basically, warm blooded, it was describing. And then after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee deep water. Knee deep. Knee deep tells us about the water. So after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee-deep water in their basement. So after a heavy downpour, some residents have to contend with knee-deep water in their household. So I think the hyphen should go by knee deep. So we say after a heavy downpour, some residents had to contend with knee deep water in the basement, putting emphasis on how much water had, for example, flooded the household. So chocolate covered fruit is my guilty pleasure. Ben confessed it doesn't matter if it's a fresh strawberry or piece of dried mango. I just can't resist. Which means that if we were to add our hyphen, right, then I would go with chocolate covered because it puts emphasis on the specific sweets. All right. So which if we're going to add our hyphen, right, we'll add our hyphen here by chocolate covered fruit because it is describing basically the fruit, right? So chocolate covered fruit. So we say chocolate covered and we put the hyphen by chocolate and cover. And that is correct, right? Because it's also telling us about the noun. So chocolate covered gets a hyphen, but also it is way easier for you. So if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area such as an air conditioned building and drink lots of water. So if we look at this word, then we're going to put a hyphen by air conditioned. So we see that a conditioned, that is going to be the word that we will add our hyphen because it tells us about the cool building, right? The cool building, especially since when the a condition is on. So if you feel dizzy while exercising in the heat, retire to a cool area such as an A conditioned building. So let's go with the first option because we put a hyphen between A and the A condition because it describes the word the building. And that one is correct. The world class aquarium in Monterey, California is known for its interactive displays, research facilities, and pioneering work with jellyfish. Right? So we need to add a hyphen to compound adjectives where necessary, right? And if we specifically look at this sentence where we need to add a hyphen, all right. So if we add a hyphen, then we can say we add a hyphen by world and class because it basically gives us an idea of the aquarium, right? So we can say that the aquarium is a world class aquarium. It's putting emphasis on how excellent their service is, and the type of place or the manner in which the aquarium is, right? So they are world class, and I feel like we need to put our hyphen over there, our world class. And that is correct. All right, so this is the end of our lessons, grade 5 and grade 8 when it comes to hyphens. We said that a compound adjective is an adjective that is made up of more than one word. We use a hyphen to join the words of a compound adjective, especially when the adjective could be misread without the hyphen. All right. So we made a few examples also of compound adjectives, right, that is joined by a hyphen. All right. So thank you, grade 8, for joining the class, and I really hope you're going to have a good evening further. Goodbye.